welcome to my first beginners class. My name's Helen and this is Peak Form Pilates. So I'm running 2 free Pilates classes that will be available for you to view on YouTube or via my website whenever you like, and my advice is that you complete both of these classes before you come onto the Gymcatch and start to watch any pay-as-you-go classes or live streamed Pilates classes. So before you join in those, enjoy yourself, grab yourself a mat, a piece of carpet, and we'll get started with our first beginners class. So we're going to go through the initial A, B, C of Pilates. First of all, our Pilates A is we're talking about our alignment. So we want to be nice and aligned at the beginning of every exercise in Pilates. So we start off with our feet together. We fan out our toes and then our heels, and our feet are now hip distance apart. They are underneath our knees and our knees are underneath our hips. Looking at our knees are nice and soft. I'll show you from this side, our knees are nice and soft. When we concentrate, we do tend to hyperextend and flick out our knees. And in doing so, our posture changes. We extend out forwards, we load into our lumbar spines, and what we want to do in Pilates is have soft knees, and then coming up to that pelvis, we're going to put hands on our hips, and we're going to rock and roll that pelvis backwards and forwards, imagining that we're in a cup of tea. And if our pelvis goes too far forwards, then the cup of tea will spill out the front of our cup. And equally, if we go too far backwards, the cup of tea is going to fall out of the back. So as we rock and roll our pelvis forwards and backwards, we want that movement to get smaller and smaller and smaller until we find that nice neutral pelvis where we're not tilted forwards and we're not tilted backwards. We've got a nice, stable, still cup of tea around us, and that is what we call our neutral pelvis, and we start our exercises from here. So our tailbone is tucked under slightly, so instead of having a round gap in our lumbar spine, we're tilting our pelvis and lengthening that lumbar curve ever so slightly. Coming up to our core, we want our core engaged. So working again with our ABC, still on our alignment, coming up to our collarbones. We want nice wide collarbones and shoulders down and away from our ears. And then our jaw, we want parallel with the floor, so our eyes are looking at the horizon straight ahead. We're going to imagine that there's a lovely gold thread coming from the top of our head, pulling us up, beautiful and tall, so we're in a nice tall position. So that is our Pilates alignment. We've got feet hip distance apart, we've got nice soft knees, we've got a neutral pelvis, we've got shoulders down and away from our ears, nice wide collarbones, and we're standing nice and tall, and our fingers run down the seams of our trousers. That's our Pilates A for alignment. Next, we come across to our Pilates B, which is for breathing. So if we place our hands, if we remove them from our sides, we place them now, fingertips facing forwards onto our rib cage, fingers nice and closed together, thumbs around the back of our ribs. We're going to stand nice and tall, we're going to breathe in through our nose, and as we exhale, we're going to exhale through our mouth. Breathing in through our nose and exhale through our mouth. So what we'll find is as we take that really big inhale, our fingers widen where they were close together as we fill up our lungs, our lateral breathing. We breathe laterally into our ribs, our fingers widen, and then we can exhale nicely. So that's our Pilates breathing. We breathe in through our nose, we breathe out through our mouth, and I'll be cueing your breathing for exercises. So ultimately, the most important thing is to breathe. Anything else, the actual pattern of breathing will come secondary to that. So that's our Pilates B for breathing. And then finally, our Pilates C is for our core and pelvic floor. So we want to be able to work all of our limbs coming from a nice, strong, stable core, and that's wrapping like a corset all the way around us. So it encompasses back muscles, our side tummy muscles, and then coming all the way round, and then up as well with our pelvic floor. So first of all then, let's imagine that we are wearing a belt, and we're tightening this belt tighter and tighter and tighter, sucking navel through to spine. So this belt is on notch 10 out of 10. It's very, very tight, and it won't actually allow me to move very much at all. That is a not appropriate place to start exercises from. So we've got our tight belt on notch 10 out of 10. And we're just going to gently relax it off, and we're going to come down to notch 2 or 3 out of 10. So that's the tension that we want on our core. Not 10 out of 10 on the belt, but notch 2 or 3 out of 10. So we've got tension on that core. We're drawing that tension through, navel through to spine, but it's still enabling us to move around nice and freely as well. Similarly to our core, our pelvic floor draws up instead of drawing in. We can think of it as a hammock. We can think of it as a lift pulling up. So we can concentrate and we can squeeze that pelvic floor up 10 out of 10, floor 10 on our lift. And just the same as the core, we can't really concentrate on anything else or move at all. So we want to relax that lift down to floor 2 or 3 out of 10. And that's the pelvic floor engagement that we want whilst we exercise. So ultimately, we've got our Pilates alignment, we've got our breathing, and we have our core and pelvic floor engagement. So standing nice and tall now, we're going to take a nice breath in through our nose, engaging that core and pelvic floor, and then out through our mouth once more. Breathing in through our noses, and then out through our mouth. Have a look down now, looking down at your toes. Are your toes scrunched up and really scrunkled up really tight? Or have you got nice wide toes relaxed down on the mat? That's what we're looking for, spreading those toes nice and wide. And then also coming to those knees, it's very tempting. As we concentrate to flick those knees out, and instantly I load into my lower back and I have long tummy muscles. So what I want to do is just to make sure we've got those soft knees, that little bounce in the knees. So as we do our inhale through our noses, exhale through our mouths, we're still maintaining that Pilates alignment. So that's how we start off each class, finding our Pilates alignment, and then we're just going to come into a little bit of a warm-up, and then we're going to do a balance exercise before we do some more exercises down onto our mat. So standing in our Pilates alignment, feet hip distance apart, nice soft knees, nice wide toes. We're going to inhale through our noses, and as we exhale, we're just going to draw our chin along an imaginary shelf to look over one shoulder. Coming back to that central position now, eyes straight ahead, inhale through our noses. And as we exhale, drawing the chin to the other side, looking over the other shoulder. And then back to the centre. So we're just going to keep this movement happening, warming up our necks. And you might find that one side, you can look a lot further round over your shoulder. Perhaps it's that right shoulder blind spot driving when we're driving in the car, checking. But we're just mobilising that neck, teaming it with our breath, nice and gently. Keeping that Pilates alignment. Lovely. So you'll find with each repetition, you may be able to go just that millimetre further as your neck muscles warm up. Lovely, eyes on the horizon, looking straight ahead now. We're going to place our hands onto our shoulders, and we're going to wind those shoulders back by drawing circles with those elbows. Really warming up the fronts of those shoulders. I would say wind our elbows backwards because I think we spend a lot of time driving or reading or at a computer with shoulders slumped forwards. So I don't need to reinforce that by rolling my shoulders forward. What I want to do is to teach my shoulders to open up, my chest to open up and wind backwards. We talk about in Pilates knitting our ribs to our hips. So as we wind our shoulders backwards, it's really tempting to stretch everything out and load into that lower spine. What we want to do is keep that Pilates alignment, those nice soft knees, tension going through that core and pelvic floor as we warm up everything else. Last one here, fantastic. Elbows in at our sides now, palms facing upwards. Eyes near horizon. We're going to inhale through our nose, and as we exhale, open up our palms, open up our arms, and close. Exhale, inhale. So this is what we call our dumb waiter. We're warming up the fronts of our shoulders, our rotator cuff muscles here. We're anchoring our elbows in at the side, so it's not an enormous movement. It's a nice gentle chest shoulder opener here. So let's do 2 more here. 1, 2. This next one, we're going to extend our arms up into a Cleopatra. We're going to rotate those palms down to the floor, back up to the ceiling and bring them in. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So keep doing this with me. I'm just going to make sure that we've got those soft knees. Those toes spread nice and wide. We've got tension going through that core and pelvic floor. So this is a beginner's class for anybody who's new to Pilates. So I cue these things all the time in classes. It's really important that we start off learning these exercises and warm-ups with really good form. We want to reinforce good habit and good posture and not bad habit and bad posture. Make this one your last one. Return those arms to the side. Now we're going to float our left arm up to the ceiling. Sorry, I'm not totally in shot. Float our left arm up to the ceiling. Standing nice and tall. Right arm shoots down the seams of our trousers. We're going to inhale through our nose. And as we exhale, we're going to lead with that head into a side bend. We're going to reach with the fingertips over the head and our right fingertips down the seams of our trousers. Feeling the left side of our body open up into this side bend. So you'll see that as we bend to the side, I want us to imagine that we're sandwiched between 2 panes of glass. So we're not rocking forwards as we lean, and we're definitely not rocking backwards as we lean. We've got our nice Pilates alignment, standing nice and tall. As we take that breath, we're going to exhale and lean and reach, stretching, opening up the side of our body, squeezing that core to return back to that central position 2 more times. Inhale to prepare. Exhale, reach and lean. Squeeze that core to come back to centre last time. So you might find again that with every repetition, you can open up and get a little bit further in that side bend. Replacing that left arm now. We're going to float our right arm up to the ceiling and do exactly the same. Left arm shoots down the seam of our trousers. Inhale to prepare. As we exhale, lead with the head. Reach, reach, reach with those fingertips. Squeeze that core back to centre 2 more times. Nice soft knees, remember. Inhale to prepare. Lovely. Sandwich between those 2 panes of glass, keeping nice and upright. So when we return, we're in our upright posture. Last one. Squeezing that core back to centre. Very well done. So we've warmed up the top half of our bodies. We're going to move into some Pilates squats to warm up the lower parts of the body. So squats are brilliant because they're really good at warming up hips and knees and ankles, quads, glutes, you name it. So we're going to stand for our Pilates squats in our Pilates alignment. Feet hip distance apart. We're going to take a breath As we exhale, we're going to shoot our bottoms backwards. So it's not the most dignified movement. What people tend to do with squats is curl down. What we want to do is we want to float our arms up, keeping our chest elevated. As we squat down, we want to tuck that tailbone under. So my tailbone, instead of shooting at the wall behind me, and I'm loading into my lower spine, I'm tucking that tailbone under, and it's facing down to the floor. And up. Exhale down, squeeze those glutes to come up to standing, knitting ribs to hips, keeping tension on that core. So we're mobilising our ankles, so you might find that with more repetitions, you can get lower down into that squat. Exhale down, inhale up. Squeezing those glutes to come up to standing. So in Pilates, we say that you should be able to hear your breath as you exhale on the movement. Inhale to come back up. Remembering to squeeze those glutes to come up to standing. Lovely. Pressing the mat away with our feet, standing up nice and tall after every repetition. Lovely. We're going to do some more squats, but these ones we call monkey squats. Our feet are a little bit wider, so instead of having feet in parallel in our Pilates alignment, we're going to step our feet out. They're shoulder width, if not a little bit wider. I've got a bit of a turnout on my feet instead of having them in parallel. Bit of a turnout if that's a clock face, perhaps 10 and 2 o'clock. We're going to do the same, keeping that chest elevated nice and high. Inhale to prepare. Exhale down, squeeze those glutes to come up to standing. Lovely, squeezing to come up standing. That wider squat stance is enabling us to work and warm up our inner thigh muscles, get a bit more movement into those hips as well. And I can find feel in this position as well, my calf muscles are starting to work a bit too. So let's go for 3 here. 2, 1, fantastic. Give those legs a bit of a shake, bringing our feet back to that parallel shoulder distance position in our Pilates alignment. We're just going to peel our heels off the mat, mobilising through the feet, shifting our weight onto the balls of our feet, working through those ankles and those toes. I'll show you from the side on. So we're peeling those feet up. You probably hear the clickings of my toes. It's not a problem. We do tend to click. As long as it's not painful, I'm not usually worried. Lovely. So if we found our rhythm here, we can exchange weight in mid-air. Lovely. Standing nice and tall, keeping tension going through that core and pelvic floor as well. Lovely. And now we can add in to this movement, we can add in an arm movement, working the whole body. So we're floating opposite arm up. So whichever knee's bending, we're floating the opposite arm. So let me show you. Left knee, right arm, left arm, right knee. Here we go. Keeping tension on that core, standing nice and tall. You'll notice that my arms stop, so they're always in my vision. They don't go totally over my head, because if they did go over my head, and again, that's an opportunity for me to load into my lower back and perhaps experience some back pain there. So I'm making sure I'm keeping that Pilates alignment by floating my arms up, so I can always still see my hands as they float. So we should feel nice and warm now. We don't want to get starting doing any exercises without having warmed up first of all. So the first thing we're going to do before we go onto the main body of our work is a nice little balance exercise. We do a lot of balance work in Pilates because it's functional work. It's going to help us on our everyday, day-to-day life as we're walking the dog, as we're hopping over things, as we're climbing ladders and all sorts of things. So we're going to do a little knee lift. So our right knee, we're going to float up and we're going to aim to float it up so our thigh bone is parallel with the floor. Let me show you side on. So I'm standing in my Pilates alignment, nice and tall, taking a breath. As I exhale, I'm floating my right leg up, keeping my knee at a right angle and my thigh bone parallel with the floor. You'll see that my left leg, my supporting leg, especially the longer that I hold this, is wobbling and moving and shaking and counterbalancing, and that's absolutely fine, totally normal. Actually, it's really good for stabilising ankles. So we're going to move on to the other side now. So sparing weight onto our right foot, lifting up our left leg into a Pilates balance, standing nice and tall, imagining still that golden thread pulling us up to the ceiling. And again, you'll see the wobbles in my leg, but that's absolutely normal, absolutely fine. If you're struggling with this, you can always hold on to a wall. There is a wall here. You can always hold on to a wall or a chair in front of you. And it's a good thing to practice. Practice as you brush your teeth in the mornings. Nice little knee raise and replace. And the other side. And again, as we said in terms of mobility, when we're talking about moving our head, our neck mobility, you might find that one side's a lot more stable than the other. And again, that's totally normal. We're just aiming to balance everything out so we're equal on both sides. So whatever you do to one side, we're going to replicate to the other. So we're doing alternate knee lifts now. If you find this quite easy, your next repetition I could progress on by telling you to rotate that ankle. So we're adding a dynamic movement into this balance, so rotating it in both directions. And then if you're finding it a bit hard, you can hold on to that chair or wall. Totally take it at your own pace. We're here to make our bodies feel better, not to hurt ourselves or get injured. And again, lovely, replacing there. Standing nice and tall, it's really tempting to bend over to one side. We want to stay nice and tall in that balance. Lovely, and that's something we can always practice on. Fantastic, so giving legs a bit of a shake, we're going to come down onto our mats now. And in Pilates, we tend to do roll downs to get us down onto our mats. So I'm standing at the edge of at the end of my mat, with my feet in parallel, and I'm going to roll my spine forwards, so forward flexion movement to try and articulate each and every vertebrae. So I'm going to start standing nice and tall, taking an inhale through my nose. As I start to exhale, I'm going to nod my chin down. Imagine I'm grabbing an imaginary apple under my chin. And I'm going to peel down, imagining my spine as a bike chain. Chink by chink, it's being articulated and peeling down until I'm in a forward fold position. In this position, I'll feel a stretch down the back of my legs, particularly my hamstrings. I want my arms to hang freely and my head and my neck to hang so I can look between my legs. Really feeling a lengthening in my neck and my lower back open up as well. So take a breath here. As we exhale, we're going to squeeze that core, squeeze those glutes as we slowly start to restack our spines by pushing hip bones forward and restacking vertebrae by vertebrae back on top, one on top of the other. The last thing to be stacked is our head, and then we're standing nice and tall. So we're going to do that again. We're going to take a breath as we exhale, Nod that chin down, grab that imaginary apple underneath our chin as we start to peel down vertebrae by vertebrae, softening those knees, letting that head hang, those knees hang, arms hang, nice soft knees, squeezing navel to spine to enable us to peel down into a forward fold position. So this time you might feel that you can stretch that a little bit further down into that fold. So from here, we're going to stir the pot with our arms in whichever direction we choose. We're just going to swing them ever so gently in a circle. Breathing nice and naturally here. Let's change that direction, stir those arms in the opposite direction, remembering to keep those knees nice and soft. Bringing those arms to a standstill. And then we're going to walk our hands out 4 steps until we're in an all fours position here. We're going to untuck our toes so our shins are flat against the mat, checking that our knees are underneath our hips and our hands are underneath our shoulders. So from here we're going to take a breath, and as we exhale we're going to nod that head down, round that spine up to the ceiling into a cat stretch. I'm breathing naturally and I'm pushing the mat away with my hands and with my shins to open up my back here. And then as I exhale, I'm going to come back to that nice long neck, that flat back position. Taking another breath. As I exhale, I'm going to round that spine up to the ceiling, pushing the mat away with my hands and my shins, squeezing navel to spine, rounding my back. Exhaling back to that neutral position. We don't want to go into that cat-cow from yoga. We want to keep tension on that core and that nice finish in that nice neutral pelvis position. Let's take another breath. And as we exhale, nod that chin, round that spine up towards the ceiling, pressing hands and shins into the mat. And gently relax back to that flat back position. So from here, we're going to tuck our toes under and we're going to push our bottoms back towards our heels. We're going to take a breath, and as we exhale, we're going to straighten those legs, pushing that bottom up to the ceiling, straightening those arms, pressing the mat away with our hands and our feet, making a downwards dog pose, squeezing navel to spine, trying to bring our ribs towards our thighs. From here, if it's comfortable to do so, one at a time, we're going to push one heel into the mat and then the second heel into the mat, stretching out calf muscles as we push those heels down one at a time. So let's do that. 3, 2, 1. Keeping those legs nice and still, dropping those knees onto the mat, coming back to all fours and unhooking those toes. From our all fours position, we're going to take a breath, and as we exhale, we're going to float our right arm up to the ceiling, and we're going to follow it with our eyes, opening up our chest and feeling a rotation in our spine as well. And then replace. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhale to prepare. As we exhale, floating that arm up to the ceiling, following it with our eyes, and replace once more. And replace. Let's do 3 on the other side. Left arm up to the ceiling as we exhale, and replace 2 more times. Once more. And replace. Lovely. Come back onto your knees. If you're not used to doing workouts on your hands and knees, loading into your wrists. It can be quite uncomfortable. So make sure you give yourself adequate breaks just to give those wrists a nice little rotation to get that movement back. Lovely. We're going to come onto our fronts now, and we're going to do some more back extension work before we turn and do some leg work and core work. So we're going to come onto our fronts, and we're going to make a diamond shape with our hands and pop our forehead into that diamond shape. So from here, our feet are as wide as the mat, and we're going to press our pelvis into the mat and squeeze our glutes. We're going to take a breath, and as we exhale, we're going to float our left leg up, pointing those toes, and gently replace. Take a breath, float the right leg up, and gently replace. As we're doing these leg floats, single leg, we're squeezing those glutes, we're pressing pelvis into the mat, and what that is doing is making our glutes take all the work, so our lower back isn't overworked and loaded. So if this is painful in your lower back, please stop, readjust, make sure that we're pressing pelvis into the mat and that you're really squeezing those glutes. Put your hand on your glute if you need to make sure you can feel it fire up as we float one leg at a time off the mat. Last one each side. Lovely. Keeping that diamond pressed with the hands, squeezing the glutes still, both of them now. Pressing pelvis into the mat, we're taking a breath. And as we exhale, we're pushing the mat away slowly with our hands, slowly and gently, bringing ourselves up into what we call a spinal extension. And again, squeezing those glutes is making them take the load and not our lower backs. So we're slowly replacing each and every vertebrae back down, taking a breath, and as we exhale, peeling up, our heads comes off, our chest comes off, and then finally stomach comes off the mat. Take a breath and slowly replace stomach, chest, neck and head. Last one here. From here, we're going to push back into a child's pose. So a child's pose is a rest position. It can be with your bottoms high and your bottom high and your arms extended, or if your shoulders are uncomfortable, you can have your arms by your side, or you can have your bottom low towards your heels, knees together or knees apart, whichever is most comfortable for you. Taking some relaxing breaths here. From here, we're going to move onto our left side onto the mat. So I'm going to line up my back with the back of the mat nice and straight. My arm I'm going to bend until my head is rested, so I'm not cricking my neck. My back's lined up with the back of the mat. I'm going to inch my feet forward so they're towards the front corner of the mat, looking down my body. My hips are stacked nicely on top of each other, as are my knees, as are my ankles, and my head is nice and relaxed. If it's more relaxed for your arm to be extended, then that's fine. My top arm, which is my right arm, is giving me some support here. So I'm going to squeeze that core and pelvic floor, breathe in through my nose. And as I exhale, I'm going to float my top leg, which is my right leg, up towards the ceiling, pointing my toes. Then I'm going to flex my foot and drag it back down, creating my own resistance. Feeling that inner thigh work with that foot flexed. And I'm going to repeat it again. Toes pointed, leg extended up to the ceiling. Flexing that foot, bringing it down. So we're going to keep doing this. And what I want us to concentrate whilst we're doing the side lying exercise is that our core is switched on, our pelvic floor is switched on, so we're going 2 or 3 out of 10 for both of those. We're lifting and lowering that leg, and we're only going as high as we can keep good form. So your form will change if you go too high and perhaps you start rolling forward and twisting your hips or rolling backwards. We want to keep those hips stacked really nicely and neatly on top of each other. And we want to keep everything really nice and still, apart from that top leg floating up and down. So if your form is compromised, just don't lift your leg as high. Keep nice and still and steady in that core. If you're finding it quite easy and you're nice and stable and you've got that core and pelvic floor engagement, you could float that top arm up, bring that foot up, flexing it and bringing it down. Lovely. Last one here. Up and down. So that our hips, glutes should start to fatigue a bit, perhaps our quads are as well. So we're going to keep that leg hovered. We can replace our arm wherever we want. We're just going to pulse up for 8, 7, don't replace that leg all the way down, 6, 5, squeeze that core, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Bringing the ankles and the knees together. We're going to bend those legs so we're at a right angle. And then we're just going to move those feet so they're behind our bottoms. And this is our clamshell exercise. And again, knees, hips and feet are glued together. And then we're going to open up that clamshell. Feet remain stuck together and close. So again, nothing else is moving. If we start to rock and roll around, make sure you've got that hand in front of you for support. And if it's really difficult and you're really moving those hips, make that clamshell a little bit smaller. So squeezing those feet together, we're going to go for 6, 5, 4, keep breathing, 3, 2, 1. Very well done. Give those glutes a nice tap. Fantastic. Because this is our first beginners video, we're going to go straight over to the other side. In future videos, we'll be mixing it up and doing some core work in between. But for now, we're going to go straight over to our right side while it's all fresh in our minds what we're doing. So we're lining up our spine with the back of the mat. We're propping up our head ever so gently on a bent arm or an extended arm, and our legs are stacked nicely, hips, knees and ankles stacked. We're just going to inch them forward to the front of the mat, so they're making that boomerang shape, banana shape ever so slightly. So our first exercise on our side was pointing those toes up, flexing that foot and bringing it down. So again, as we do this, we're really concentrating on that core and pelvic floor stability. That's stopping that pelvis from moving, those hips from wobbling around, and is giving us a really nice side lying posture. So we want to be able to have a nice posture in whichever position we are as we exercise, whether we're standing, seated, laid on our sides or our backs, on all fours, you name it. We want to be able to maintain a nice neutral pelvis and a strong core. So let's go here for 3 more. Remember to float that arm if you've got that stability already. 2, floating that arm. 1, lovely. Floating that arm destabilises us, as making that core work that little bit more. So the next exercise we did was we floated that top leg up to hip height. We take a breath, floating that arm if we like, we're using it as support. We're pulsing up for 8, 7, 6. So you might find that this side fatigues a little bit quicker because it's already done the good work of supporting the other side already. 2 more, 1 more, fantastic. Lowering that leg, bending those knees, and then moving those feet to behind our glutes, making sure knees and ankles are glued together. We're going to take a breath, squeezing feet together. We're going to open and close that clamshell, keeping that core engaged. 4 more, 3, 2, 1, fantastic. Give those glutes a big tap. Amazing. So we're going to come onto our backs now for a few exercises laid on our backs. So we want our feet in what we would call a crook position. So our feet are flat on the mat, our knees are pointing up to the ceiling. Lovely. And our feet are hip distance apart and about a foot's length away from our glutes. So from here, again, we're going to rock and roll that pelvis till we find that neutral spine and we switch on that core and pelvic floor. In this position, that neutral spine means that my lumbar arch, that gap under my back, is got a lot smaller as I'm pushing my back into the mat. Lovely. So we're engaging our core and pelvic floor here. We're going to take a breath and we're going to just peel up from our pelvis onto our sit bones, peeling up into a shoulder bridge. In this position, we're squeezing our glutes at the top. We've got that core engagement. Our hands are flat down into the mat, engaging our tricep muscles at the back of our arms. Taking a breath here as we exhale. We're slowly replacing one vertebrae at a time. Back onto the mat to our start position, checking our feet, making sure they're still hip distance apart, a foot's length away from our backs, pressing that lumbar spine into the back, and then continue to peel up, imagining that bike chain as your spine again, inch by inch, vertebrae by vertebrae, it's being peeled up. We're up onto our shoulders, squeezing our glutes. Taking a breath as we exhale, replacing chink by chink, vertebrae by vertebrae, back down onto the mat. To begin with, check your neck in this position, that you're not bringing chin up to the ceiling. We want a nice long neck here. So let's do a few more repetitions, coming up into that shoulder bridge, squeezing glutes at the top, engaging that core, taking a breath, exhaling, peeling back down. Lovely. So you might find that after 2 or 3 repetitions, your feet have travelled quite far down the mat. So bring them back to that crook position, making sure that they're hip distance apart. And we will do a final few repetitions here. 1 more. Peeling that spine up. Taking a breath. peeling back down. Lovely, very well done. So we're now going to hug knees into chest, massaging our back into the mat by rocking from side to side. Lovely. The next exercise that we do is going to be our ab prep. This is the foundation for a lot of ab exercises in Pilates classes. That's why it's good to go over that today in this beginner's class. So replacing our feet onto the mat in that crook stance, tilting that pelvis, pressing lower spine into the mat. Going to put our fingers, interlace our fingers behind our head, elbows nice and wide, thumbs down the back of our neck. From here we're going to take a breath. As we exhale, we're going to peel our head and our shoulders off the mat, squeezing our core to come up into this mini ab prep, and gently replace. So inhale to prepare, exhale, peeling up off the mat, squeezing those tummy muscles and that core, that pelvic floor, and replacing onto the mat. Lovely. What we can do to make it a little bit harder is take away the support of our arms if you're ready for that, and we can have our arms nice and long as we take a breath, and then as we exhale we're reaching with those fingertips, squeezing that core, fingers nice and long, squeezing that core and slowly replacing. Let's do that 2 more times. Up into our ab prep and back down. Once more. If we find that progression of our arms reaching out a bit too much on the neck flexors, let's replace those hands behind our head, making sure our thumbs are down our necks and we can see our elbows nice and wide, and slowly replace. Fantastic. We're going to do 3 more now in whichever variation is best for you, whether it's head supported by hands or whether it's arms nice and long. So let's go for 3, 2, and 1. Replacing back onto the mat, and this time we're just going to rotate our head from one side to the other, just in case we've got any our neck's been flaring, bit of any neck pain, just to loosen that off by rotating from one side to the other. Fantastic. Hug knees into chest, rock from side to side, massaging lower back into the mat. We're going to do 1 more exercise, really promoting our spinal rotation, our spinal mobility, and then we'll do a couple of cool down stretches, and that'll be it for today. So coming up, however is most comfortable to you, we're going to come up onto our knees into a high kneeling position. If kneeling is uncomfortable, do feel free to pop a cushion under your knees or do these exercises in standing. From a kneeling position, again, we're tucking tailbone under and we're keeping our core engaged. So I'm not sticking my tailbone out, I'm pushing those hips forward and squeezing those glutes. We're going to put our hands in a prayer position and put our thumbs onto our breastbone. From here, we're going to retract our shoulders. So at the beginning of the class, we roll those shoulders backwards, and that's exactly what we're going to do now. Roll those shoulders backwards so they're away from our ears, and almost as if we're gripping a pencil between our shoulder blades. So instead of having big round shoulders rounding forwards, we're engaging those shoulders whilst our hands are in prayer. We're sticking our thumbs to our breastbone. We're going to keep our hips facing forward. Inhale through our nose, and as we exhale, we're going to rotate to one side and come back to center. So as we do this, I want us to imagine that we have the headlamps of a car on the front of our hips. So our hips aren't moving, those headlamps those beams of light aren't changing. They are solely focused forward, and it is just the top half that is moving as we rotate around. So last one, each side. So we're going to do that again. You can progress this and change the arm position, and what this is doing is putting a bigger load, because our arms are further away from the centre point of gravity, a bigger load through our core and our spine as we rotate. This is called cactus arms or stop pose, whichever you prefer. We're going to take a breath, and exactly the same as we rotate, keep hip bones facing forward. Once more each side. Fantastic. Pop those arms down, roll those shoulders back. We're going to do one more set of 8. And as we exhale, we're going to do a pulse. So you can either join in with hands in prayer or hands in stop position. So we're going to do exhale and a pulse at the same time. So inhale to prepare, and we're going to go and back to centre. So you should feel your core tightening with those exhale breaths. So whether your arms are in stop or in prayer, it's harder work for those core muscles. Once more each side. Back to centre. Fantastic. Roll those shoulders backwards. Very well done. That's lovely. So coming to the end of our class now, we are going to go back onto our backs for a nice little stretch, stretching out those glutes that we worked in our side lying leg series, and this is a figure 4 stretch. So we're going back onto our mats with our feet in that crook position. We're going to get our left foot and cross it, our left ankle over our right knee. We're going to get our left hand, and we're just going to press the left knee away, opening up that hip flexor. That should feel nice. If we want to increase this stretch and really work into opening up our glutes, we can remove that left hand and float feet off the mat, bringing them closer to our body. So that's opening up my left hip and glute now. If you want to increase this, we can get our left hand, post it through the gap between our legs, and either hold onto our hamstring or our shin and pull legs into the body, really feeling a deep stretch into our glutes. It's a nice one as well if you get any sciatic pain. It's a nice stretch to open up lower back, lying in this position and opening up those glutes. So taking some deep breaths into, this is what we call a figure 4 stretch. Opening up those glutes in a figure 4 stretch. We can increase that stretch by making sure that left foot is flexed and our toes are flexed up towards our knees. Lovely. Gently release those hands, replacing both feet onto the mat. Then we're going to do exactly the same the other side. So right ankle over left knee, right hand on right knee, pressing right knee away. And again, if we want to increase that, we absolutely can do. Floating feet off the mat, bringing knees closer to the body. And then the final progression is flexing that foot towards the knee, right hand through the gap between your legs and hugging legs closer to the body, either holding onto the shin or onto the hamstring. You might find that one side's a lot easier or one side's an awful lot tighter than the other, and that's totally normal. So it's good to do these stretches and just figure out which side we need to work on and spend a bit more time loosening off. Taking some nice relaxing breaths here. Gently unhooking those feet, popping them back onto the mat. Lovely. So we're going to come up onto our mat, onto all fours. We're going to tuck our toes underneath and walk our hands back until we're in a crouched position like this, stretching out our heels and our Achilles. From here we're going to take a breath, and as we exhale we're going to push the mat away with our hands, coming up into a forward fold position, making sure those knees are bent. From here we're going to take a breath, walk our hands back to around our calves or our ankles. We're going to bend and straighten those legs, stretching out everything in our posterior chain, stretching out hamstrings and calves, opening up our lower back. 2 more times here. Lovely, letting those arms hang, that neck hang, taking a breath. And as we exhale, squeezing those glutes, slowly starting to restack our spine, pushing those hips forward, peeling up. Last thing to restack is our head. Lovely. So we're going to roll those shoulders back. Nice. Popping feet together, fanning out toes and our heels. Nice soft knees coming up now. Finding that neutral pelvis, tucking that tailbone under, standing nice and tall, jaw parallel with the floor, that golden thread pulling us up nice and tall. Keeping those knees nice and soft and tension going through that core and pelvic floor. So that's our Pilates alignment, and that's how we will finish just as we started today. My encouragement to you would be to practice your Pilates alignment when you wake up, standing nice and tall. Practice it while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, your toast to pop. Just practice that a few times a day, standing nice and tall. So thank you for joining me on our first beginners class. We've got one more to do before you join in with all the on-demand and live classes through the Peak Form app on the Gymcatch. Peak Form site on the Gymcatch app. There we go. Got there in the end. I'd love to hear your comments. Do message me or comment below. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I hope to see you soon.